Obviously, we were going to save the big one for last. NFL MVP, most valuable player for the 2024 season. It's the big one. It's the one that generates the most debate. It's the one we save for the end of the show. Also, very fittingly, we managed to bring in the guy. I don't think we did this on purpose, but the vast majority of our conversations about NFL MVP this season happened with our friend Henry McKenna of foxsports.com. So it only felt right that he joined me to reveal our NFL MVP. Henry, how we doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, glad to be here. Let's get a little conclusion on this multi-chapter discussion.
Without giving anything away, I may or may not have peeped at the fan results. So I've got an idea of what's coming, and I think it's going to add a fun layer to our conversation here. So let's get into it. Obviously, we have 4 candidates to choose from here. None of them should be terribly surprising. It's the 2 quarterbacks we've all talked about, we've all argued about. I think we're all very confident that Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills and Lamar Jackson are going to factor heavily into this. Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the best running back seasons we've seen in recent memory. And Jared Goff, who was the face of the Lions, who were, in my opinion, I know how it went in the playoffs, but in my opinion, the team of the regular season this year. It's very unsurprising to see him here. So, Henry, let's walk through this, man. And okay, with all due respect to Jared Goff, I think we can leave him behind as we progress this conversation. He had a wonderful season. I know it didn't end well in the playoffs. It's not a knock on him, but when you're talking about NFL MVP, felt like there was enough going on that Lions team, and there was enough not done by Jared Goff that I think we're comfortable saying it was a really cool story, not going to be NFL MVP. So let's take it to the rest of this. And I guess let's start here. I'm curious for your thoughts on this, and I think you and I probably agree. When the actual award is announced at NFL Honors on Thursday, it'll probably be either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. But what about the candidacy of Saquon Barkley? How seriously should we take it? Have we not given it enough airspace considering how incredible he's been? And obviously, we know now that the Philadelphia Eagles will be in the Super Bowl. Have we given this enough credence as a possibility or something that should happen?
Yeah, I like the question because I don't think it's a possibility, but I do think it's a thing that should have been under greater consideration. In the current NFL climate, quarterbacks win most valuable player. That's just how it is. And a lot of the advanced statistics and the analytics are going to show us that quarterbacks are most valuable. And they're going to back up the MVP case and resume for a quarterback. But for Saquon Barkley, he is sort of this fascinating microcosm of something that might be like a sign of what's to come for this league. And I don't think that necessarily we're going to see Saquon Barkley is running all over the place. I don't think that that's the case. But what I think we might see is an increased value of running backs, an increased importance of running backs. And Saquon is, like, if you look at his his receiving statistics, nothing out of the ordinary. I think it's like 200 yards. It's all that he did on the ground, 2,000 yards on the ground. That's what makes him valuable. And I think you look at what Jalen Hurts did. I wrote a story earlier this week about how Hurts focuses only really on winning, and that's why his statistics were underwhelming this year. But which is true. Like, you can see within the game plan that they devalued Hurts and increased value in Saquon. But I also think, like, he didn't necessarily have it in the same way that have it in the same way that we've seen in years past. In the opening 4 weeks, they really wanted to count on him. He turned over the ball 7 times in 4 weeks. They went 2-2. The Eagles needed Saquon Barkley to be the centerpiece of the offense in a way that there is literally no other offense in the NFL that focuses on a running back like this. Not Derrick Henry, because Lamar Jackson is there. This is literally an offense built around a running back. We don't see that in the NFL anymore. That's my case for Saquon as MVP is that he's one of one, and the Eagles' offense is unique. And yes, quarterbacks are crushing it right now. They're going to keep crushing it, but what Saquon did was different. What Saquon is different. That's the MVP case for him.
I think you make a really great point about where this league might be going. And I've been thinking about this a lot. How could you not? You look at the teams that played on championship weekend and the teams that have been good recently. It's nice to have an X-Man playing quarterback. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are X-Men, super mutant quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes obviously is. I don't want to put too much on his plate too early, but Jaden Daniels showed signs of being that type of guy with his escape ability, his running ability, all that good stuff. If you don't have that player, if you don't have that guy at quarterback, maybe the answer is Saquon Barkley, or look around at other successful teams. I mean, I think Derrick Henry supercharged the Ravens offense. Jahmyr Gibbs showed how valuable his playmaking ability is for the Lions. I wonder if that is the next best thing. If you cannot find that super freak quarterback, it feels like you need to get a guy with Saquon Barkley's dynamic playmaking ability onto your offense. And the way defenses are playing in the NFL these days, it makes a lot of sense if teams are going to pivot and try to find those guys, whether it's in the draft or in free agency.
Yeah, I think of Bill Belichick often in situations like this where we're thinking about big trends in the league. What Belichick was doing at the end of his tenure, and unsuccessfully, obviously, but what he was doing was moving to Ramondre Stevenson, the Patriots' oversized running back who could both catch and run the ball between the tackles off the edges. He is a much more dynamic back than they've displayed over the last few years. The idea that he could be a three down player in an NFL where the personnel more than ever is designed to stop the pass, where the nickel defenders are like 175 pounds, where the cornerbacks are under 200 pounds, where the linebackers are under 230 pounds, right? The sheer mass of current NFL defenses is outlandishly low from a historical standpoint. And I think what Belichick saw was a simple matter of addition. Like he thought, you know what, we could weigh more than a lot of these other teams and just bully them and just take control of the middle of the field. The Eagles aren't exactly that, but like they're a pretty big football team, from Jalen Hurts, who squats 600, to Saquon Barkley, who also squats 600, to AJ Brown, who's like 6'1" and 220 pounds, and sort of like the old school prototype of receiver in that he's larger than most of these wide receiver ones who are much more slender than they used to be. This is a group of bullies on the Philly offense, and I think if Belichick probably would have designed an offense, it would have looked something like this. Right now, of course, he's at UNC, so it's irrelevant. But that's kind of my thought is like, okay, it's a lot easier said than done with college emphasizing lighter players too. But it is fascinating to see it at work in Philly because on one hand, you've got, the Chiefs that have sort of done this as well in the Super Bowl, where they're like emphasizing the run more than they ever have. And Mahomes isn't having his best or most prolific season of his career. So we are, and even the Bills like really emphasized the run this year. So we are seeing teams that can play bully ball do it. And the reason I think is that numbers, the poundage metric.
It's obviously way easier said than done to go find a Saquon Barkley. He's a mutant in his own right. But I think this is a trend that's going to gain steam, especially with what we've seen this year. Let's wrap up the candidates. I'll make this simple. I think Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson is picking flavors of ice cream. I don't think there is a right answer or a wrong answer here. I'm going to say, and I did not have an MVP vote this year, just for what it's worth. If I did, I would have voted for Lamar Jackson at the end of the regular season. I think it was a singular season, even by his lofty standards, first player with 40 pass touchdowns and 4 or fewer interceptions, first player with 4,000 passing yards and 800 rushing yards. He led the league in passer rating. His passer rating of 119.6 is the 4th highest in the history of this league. I got 10 more of these that demonstrate why I think he was the most valuable player in football. The fun part about it is I think you can make an equally compelling case for Josh as well.
All right, so now I'm going to do it. Here's the case for Josh Allen. I think I'm gonna say the thing that's kind of annoying first, which is that I think if you really sit down with the film, you'll see the degree of difficulty for Josh Allen was genuinely more challenging than Lamar Jackson. And I think that's kind of annoying for the average fan who's like, well, I don't care about the All-22. Like, I don't sit down with the All-22. I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers are preposterously like weighted toward Lamar Jackson. So for that fan, I think the other thing that we should think about is 3rd and 4th down. Because, look, the most valuable player in the NFL is inevitably going to be a quarterback. And the skill, more than anything, is that we want our quarterbacks to be winners, and we want them to help our team win by converting 3rd and 4th downs. So, yes, Lamar Jackson actually, by advanced statistics, had a better EPA, better expected points added than Josh Allen. But on 3rd and 4th down, that's where Josh Allen shined this year. So on 3rd and 4th down, Allen has a total EPA of 42.7 with a 0.28 EPA per drop back. In the same situations, we saw Lamar's total sit at 30.1 with an EPA of 0.21 per drop back. So in both statistics, we see Lamar come up short from Josh Allen. And this is with, Lamar having 2 elite tight ends that would be, the best in most NFL offenses. They'd be the best tight ends on their team. And Zay Flowers being a superior receiver to basically every receiver that Josh Allen was working with this year. Even, I would say, Amari Cooper, who came in at midseason and didn't look competent in that offense, didn't look like he had full command of it at any point. So I think that given the degree of difficulty, given what we saw in film and the true spectacular nature of what he was doing, and given that the stats actually back up the fact that he was doing something spectacular on the downs that mattered most, that Josh Allen is actually the most valuable player by that logic. Because in the moments that were most valuable, he was the best player. And even to the degree that he was actually better than Lamar in those most valuable moments.
I think the most compelling part of that for me is definitely that this was a Bills team that, quote unquote, took a step back in its offensive personnel. I would agree that in totality, you like the Ravens pieces more than you like the Bills pieces, even though several members of the Bills offense really shined with these bigger opportunities in 2024. I agree with you on that. I think it's a testament to how singular Lamar Jackson was. And I understand Derrick Henry is a big part of that. I understand Zay Flowers had a phenomenal season, but we just haven't seen much raw output at this level as consistently as Lamar did it. And when you remember, the voting for this is technically done before the playoffs, I think you can make more than a compelling enough case. But we've talked enough. I'm curious to see what the listeners and what the fans thought. So without further ado, can y'all reveal to me the NFL on Fox podcast NFL MVP? Saquon Barkley with 58% of the votes. Henry, I think this is how you can tell that that these votes were made after the postseason concluded, because having watched Lamar and Josh fall short of the ultimate goal, I think it becomes a much more compelling case. Saquon, obviously, 442 yards in the playoffs this year. Basically, I can't quite say carried, but was a huge, huge part of getting the Eagles to the Super Bowl. I understand how he wins in this situation. I don't expect him to win at NFL Honors next week, but to the conversation we had earlier, maybe this is something that should be considered more heavily. And maybe I don't expect to see this every single year, but maybe the type of season we saw from Saquon can open people's eyes to the idea that this isn't actually just a quarterback award, even though it's felt like one for quite some time at this point.
Right. And CMC was a good example of a player who was ascending at the right moment in an offense that was ready to feature him in a really intense way. And then there are, I don't know, looking at the running back position around the league, there are players who could be, the next guy in line. I mean, even Ashton Jaunty, the Boise State running back coming out of the draft that many people have connected with the Cowboys. That's a guy that I think could potentially do something Saquon like, maybe in a few years, maybe in 2025. So, and then obviously Bijan Robinson, I think, is still sort of like waiting to get unlocked by the right situation in Atlanta coming into place. So, a number of transcendent talents at the position around the league, and I think Saquon it ultimately is getting, I think it was 56 or 54% of the votes, because he is the best running back on the planet. And not maybe I don't know. It's hard to argue that he's the best playmaker on the planet right now, given what we just said about Lamar and Josh Allen. Because I actually agree with everything you said about Lamar Jackson. I just get especially defensive about Josh Allen because I feel like the case needs to be made, baby. But anyway, yeah. So I don't know. What do you think? What's the deal with Saquon?
I'm in a perfect world, for the record, I've said this a few times. In a perfect world, Josh and Lamar could share this award this year. I don't enjoy picking a winner because I think they were both that sensational this year. Again, I don't expect this from Saquon, but I love that we had the conversation. I think if anybody since Adrian Peterson in 2012 has been deserving, it is him. And I guess the best compliment I can give him is that I hope this season opens people's eyes to the importance of the running game, to the importance of having a player of that caliber back in your backfield. And I got to give you credit, man. That's a hell of a tease. Not just Bijan Robinson, but we're getting a little Ashton Genty talk on the pod early. And that's definitely something we're going to have to watch as the draft gets underway. Because regardless of whether he's with the Cowboys or anybody else, if he lands in the right situation, that's the type of guy that's going to be a household name right away. So well done to you for not just helping me recap 2024, but setting the table for 2025. This was a lot of fun, man. I'm looking forward to seeing who officially wins it. I'm guessing it's Lamar Jackson, but I think we made 3 really compelling cases here. So Henry, thank you very much, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Have a good night.